to the usual satellites that come by a plane, Aeolus could not have supported the differences in pressure that you find in a plane. Aeolus has its specificities and its fragilities. So now we're going to show you a short summary of the launch campaign that involves numerous players here at the Guyana Space Center.
We are nearing the end of this exciting launch campaign, which started about 2 months ago. On the 28th of June, the Aeolus satellite arrived in French Guiana by boat, which is quite uncommon for Arianespace launch campaigns. The choice to come by boat was made to avoid the pressure changes which occur during takeoff and landing of an airplane, and for which the payload is very sensitive. The satellite was transported to the S5 facilities at CSG the same day and was unpacked the day after. A fit check was performed to verify the interfaces between the satellite and the launch adapter. In this test, the air purge system was also checked. The purging system is introduced to keep the payload extremely clean, as the slightest contamination could impact the mission performance.
The contribution of Arianespace Payload, Environment and Interfaces Department to Aeolus project started well before the launch campaign. Indeed, this department is in charge to ensure the spacecraft qualification to Vega flight environment, to customize the flight adapter, which enable first to install the spacecraft on the launcher, then its good separations once the targeted orbit is reached. We are also in charge to verify the compatibility between this adapter and the satellite via different kind of compatibility checks called fit checks. Thus, for Aeolus, I participated in 2017 to separation tests and beginning of 2018 to the fit check, allowing to confirm the total compatibility, mechanical and electrical, of the two elements, adapter and satellite. For what concerns the launch campaign, the Payload Interface Technical Authority issues a technical specification to be respected during the different combined operations between spacecraft and upper part elements at the adapter and the ferry. These specifications enable to respect all the requirements of this equipment and of the satellite.
In the following weeks, the electrical testing on the satellite was performed and the preparations for the fueling were completed. In the S5B fueling hall, the satellite was filled with the monopropellant hydrazine, and next to this, the satellite was also filled with oxygen. The oxygen has no function in the propulsion system, but is used for in-orbit purging of the high-power lasers and the emission path optics. The oxygen purging is required to avoid any deposit of contamination, again to guarantee the extreme cleanliness of the payload. After the fueling operations, the combined operations phase was started with the integration of the Aeolus spacecraft on its flight adapter. After final checks and inspections, the fairing was integrated around the spacecraft, forming the so-called pack.
All along this combined phase, the technical authority worked in very close collaboration with the responsibles of operation, giving its technical support when needed and participating to the potential anomalies solving. The technical authority is also one of the spacecraft customer main contacts during the launch campaign, providing its support on technical topics.
The dress rehearsal has been completed successfully from Jupiter 2. The launch readiness review has been held and the authorization to enter final chronology has been given. We are now entering the final phase of the countdown up to liftoff.
Joshua Jampel back here in the booth with Martin Kaspers of ESA, and I have your title, Head of Earth Observation Programs, Product Assurance and Safety. Is that all right?
That's all right.
So that means that you are looking at the insurance policies?
No, it's mainly the product assurance to check if we apply the right processes at the right time in the right way with the right people.
Very good. Okay, so what's your average day on the Aeolus project?
Well, the average day is we check the procedures, we talk with the contractors on testing and execution of everything.
Okay, how long have you been on the project?
I started in 2005 on the structural model when it was tested in ESTEC in Noordwijk, the Netherlands, and since 8 years I've been the full-time product assurance manager.
Okay, first time in Kourou? Last question for you.
No, this is at least the third time that I'm here.
Okay. The space-based activities can be summed up by these green status panels you see on the right of your screen. What they are is a go, no-go, green-red resume of everything it takes to prepare, launch, and follow Vega. Green means okay, red means the opposite, of course. Very simple. We get a red in any of these areas, we will stop the countdown. And as you see, we are go. And you say you've seen a launch before.
I saw the latest Galileo launch in July.
From the beach?
From the beach. I was in Kourou on the beach and it was very exciting.
Okay, there are some 1,700 people working at the space base in all. It's a busy place. You don't have cameras everywhere. But we have one here, which is at the Vega Launch Management Center, about 14 kilometers away from Jupiter where we are. The men and women you see are only 3 kilometers from the pad, but they are protected inside a blockhouse with walls 1 meter thick. Liftoff is controlled from there, only liftoff. Overall mission control provided from here in Jupiter. The team's there, led up by Frédéric Fakin, the Launch Complex Operations Manager. Any of your colleagues up there tonight?
No, my colleagues are at the moment in S5 in the satellite control area.
Which is, I guess, halfway between here and the launch base.
About right, yes.
So right now the teams that you see at the launch center are monitoring all the operations leading right down to liftoff. Once Vega leaves the pad, their job is done. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of parameters to check. I guess you agree with me here, right? Basically what's happening now is that power is passing from the ground, which controls everything now, to the Vega onboard computers, which will control everything after liftoff. Under 2 minutes to go. Now, I know you're going to go outside and watch the launch. Before you go, just tell me what's going through your mind right now after all these years on the project.
I'm feeling quite emotional at the moment, and I don't know how I will react when I see it really going up, but it's such a long program, and let's see it going up.
All right, well, we'll get your reaction when you come back. Martin's going to go outside. You see the other people here in the hall going out on the 2 terraces on either side of the building here. Vega, you get a good shot of the launch pad, and they will see Vega rising up and going toward the north. Martin is going to be out there. He'll be back, don't know when, maybe after the separation of the first stage, maybe a little later. And we'll get his live reaction and his emotional reactions.
DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute.
DDO is going to announce the 1 minute mark now.
Top H0 moins 1 minute.
So we are into the final 60 seconds. Give us a chance to say hello to all our friends at Airbus Defence and Space in Les Mureaux, back in France, at ESA headquarters in Paris, ESTEC and ISAC and ESRIN, all of our industrial partners as well, as we look at the spectators gearing up for the liftoff. To all of you watching on the internet, also we all hope you're enjoying the evening. We're going to cut away and let you enjoy the liftoff. You will hear the DDO call out the final 10 seconds and we'll be underway. Enjoy the liftoff, everyone.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage P80 et décollage VV12 Aeolus. La propulsion est nominale. La trajectoire est nominale, la propulsion du P80 est nominale.
The DDO says all is fine on board. You saw Vega take off like a shot. I'm always amazed. It took her about 3 seconds to cross my computer screen here. 3 seconds, rising like an arrow. Surprisingly fast if you're used to watching the Ariane 5 liftoff. Ariane 5, of course, raises into the air much more slowly, weighs 6 times what Vega does, carrying 4 times as much propellant. Fine shots of her rising into the light clouds. All is well on board, says the DDO. Vega weighing 138 tons at liftoff, as she lifts off from French Guiana, beginning the 12th mission in her career. They call her the light launcher at 138 tons, but I guess that's relative. The first stage is burning now. She weighs 97 tons. 88 tons of that are fuel. Most of any launcher's weight is propellant in any system that we're using today. The first stage burns its single engine for about 2 minutes before being jettisoned. Maybe we'll be able to see that as our camera is tracking Vega, because visibility is pretty good. First stage is produced in Colleferro near Rome. then delivered to the French Guiana plant here, where it's loaded with fuel and transferred to the booster integration building. You probably saw some of that
Acquisition de la
on the
télémesure
video
lanceur par la
on the
station de
launcher campaign.
Saint-Jean-du-Maroni.
And having returned with a big
Séparation
smile on his
P80.
face before separation is Martin Kaspers. So,
Allumage du
how is it?
Z023.
Incredible.
Tell us.
You see it, you feel it, and all the emotion that comes loose.
Début du dogleg.
It's great.
You're laughing.
No, it's not laughter. Yes, it's laughter, but also a cry.
Did you cry? Did you shed a tear?
I did shed a tear.
That's good. What impressed you the most? The sound, the speed, the light, what?
The light was so bright. I had not expected that from such a small launcher. I saw the Galileo or the Ariane launch, but
Yeah.
this was much brighter than I had expected.
It's like Times
Tous les
Square out
paramètres
there.
à
You can
bord
read a
sont
newspaper.
normaux.
All right, very good. Come down and watch a launch, folks, if you haven't already. P80, first stage separation has come on time. The second stage is burning. We're into the second stage burn, called second stage the Z23, Z for Zefiro. Burns its solid rocket motor for 86 seconds. Avio, of course, responsible for production, integration, and testing of both second
Fin
and
du
third
dogleg et
stages.
propulsion du Z23, parfaitement nominal.
Vega's launching north, going into a sun-synchronous orbit. Why do we need that sort of an orbit?
We need it for Aeolus, for the instrument for Aladdin. We
Fin de
want to have a
propulsion
dusk to
du
dawn
Z23.
orbit, so that we're always in the sunlight, and it's also the best way to measure the wind profile.
And the orbit is called, they have a name for it, it's ball of yarn orbit, right? Explain that to us.
It is basically you go north to south pole while the Earth
Z23.
is rotating underneath of you, and this way you peel off the Earth completely.
You saw separation of the second stage. We're waiting for confirmation by the DDO of the third stage, ignition of the third stage.
Allumage
And there you are,
Z09.
right on time. And
Et
coming up
séparation
next,
coiffe.
separation of the
Trajectoire
fairing.
nominale.
All right on time. We can separate the fairing now because we've made it out of the atmosphere. Now, exposed to the elements, on the right, the round white section, that's your baby.
Well, the baby is the cubicle and the white part of it in total. Yes.
So she needs no more protection from the atmosphere. She's getting her first taste of space.
Of space, but not the first taste of vacuum. She was tested in CSL Belgium.
Right, we have a story about that coming up. First, we're used to seeing, here's a question for you, commercial satellites, 15-year lifespan, maybe more. 3 years for Aeolus. Why is that?
Well, Aeolus is
trajectoire
one
est
of the
toujours
Earth
nominale.
explorers, and it's also a technology demonstrator. And because of the small size, we have less fuel on board than the telco satellites have.
Right. So how much fuel, roughly?
We have about 266 kilograms of fuel on board.
La propulsion du
Or a
Z09
free
est
emission.
nominale.
And the other thing is geostationary satellites are geostationary. They use less fuel to stay in orbit.
Now, why is that?
Because they are geostationary, so they've got...
Because they don't go round in
they
the
don't
ball of
go
yarn.
around. Exactly.
Okay, very good. Another question for you. Aeolus is riding inside the Avum, that's the upper stage. What is Aeolus doing now? I ask you because sometimes satellites are launched on internal power, sometimes they're not on internal power. There are two schools of thought, and there are advantages for both sides. What's the case today?
Well, for Aeolus, we are on internal power since about 10 minutes before launch. So we made sure that our baby is awake and running its own internal processes.
And what's the advantage to that?
The advantage is that we know that the spacecraft is on. You can also switch it on in orbit through a telecommand. But then, if you miss it, it will not go on. The disadvantage of what we're doing now is that you're on internal power, so you're draining the battery.
You're using some of that power.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I guess there's a case to be made for both sides. That's a hot debate in the space industries. As I see it, Vega means, excuse my Italian, Vettore Europeo di Generazione Avanzata, or Advanced Generation European Vehicle. The light launcher is the newest member of the Ariane family. Coming up on separation of the third stage. There you are, right on time. Confirmation from the DDO. Now what's left of the composite? On the left, the triangular bit is the Avum, triangular white bit. The gold box in the middle is what?
That's what we call the platform. So that's basically containing all the equipment to keep the satellite in the right
L'orbite à la
orbit.
séparation du Z9
And you
était
can still see
nominale.
the composite on the right of your screen. And, of course, the spherical, the oval, white on the bottom is the
Telescope. The telescope, which is part of the instrument Aladdin.
Aladdin. Very good. We'll have more on the instruments coming up later. We have been picked up by our downrange tracking stations. There's one here in Galileo. The next one is in the Bermuda Islands, where there's a NASA station. Bermuda will be tracking the launcher from the first Avalon ignition to its cutoff on the first pass around the Earth.
Début de la manœuvre
See how we're going
d'orientation
north?
avant le premier allumage de l'AVOM.
You see the composite being spun up before the first ignition of the Avalon. The first ignition, a long one, lasting about 8 minutes. There will be another one later on, a short one lasting about 20 seconds. Tell us about some of the other stations. I know there's some stations far north, Norway, Sweden, and Antarctica, that are going to be picking up the signal after the Bermuda station.
Yeah, so we have one telemetry station in Kourou, Sweden. That is where we upload data for the control of the spacecraft. And then we've got two ground stations in...
There's the, while you're thinking, there's the beginning of the first Avalon burn.
Okay, one is in Svalbard and the other one is in Troll, and there we download the science data from the spacecraft.
The Troll station in Antarctica will give us the final acquisition of the signal later on. Vega's history, briefly, it's interesting though. She grew out of an early U.S. missile called Scout, you may remember. Italy used the Scout from the 60s through the 80s, and it flew 27 times.
Impressive.
Yeah. Launching originally from Wallops Island off Virginia, sort of on the flight path tonight, north over the east coast of the U.S. Then she launched from the San Marco platform off the coast of Kenya. This was an old oil platform, if you can believe that, on the equator, like Kourou is near the equator. In 1992, Scout production was closed down, but the project continued as an Italian venture called the San Marco Scout, led by ASI, the Italian Space Agency, and Avio. So you see, Avio has been involved since the
La
beginning.
télémesure lanceur est bien reçue par la station de Bermude.
Didio says Bermuda is picking up the signal now. Our next film, a look at Aeolus close up.